There's something different about Halloween in the Appalachians. The air gets heavy, the woods go silent, and people start remembering the stories they try to forget all year. Out here, the rules still matter. Don't whistle in the dark. Don't answer your name if you hear it from the trees. And whatever you do, don't stay out past midnight on Halloween night. These mountains keep their secrets, but sometimes, just once a year, they let a few of them slip. What you're about to hear are true accounts from people who live here, people who experience something they can't explain. Turn off the lights, put on your headphones, and remember, in Appalachia, Halloween doesn't end when the sun comes up. The Whistler by the river. I've lived in the Appalachians my whole life, just outside a small town near the Tennessee-North Carolina border. Around here, you grow up hearing stories about things that live in the woods. You don't think much of it until something happens to you. This happened on Halloween last year. My cousin Mark and I decided to go night fishing down by the river. We'd done it plenty of times, but that night felt different the second we got there. The air was still, too still. The woods were dead quiet. No frogs, no crickets, nothing. We were sitting there, lines in the water, barely talking, when we heard it. This long, drawn-out whistle. 3 notes, not too loud, but sharp enough to carry across the water. At first, I thought maybe it was a hunter or a kid trying to mess with us. But the sound came from across the river, a place where there's nothing but forest for miles. Mark whistled back, trying to make light of it. A second later, the same whistle came again, exact same pitch and rhythm, like it was mimicking him. We laughed it off, but I felt this knot start to form in my stomach. It didn't sound right. It didn't sound human. A few minutes later, it came again, only this time, from behind us. That's when my heart stopped for a second. The trees back there were thick and close, and there was no way someone could have crossed the river that fast without us noticing. Mark called out, "Hello?" His voice echoed. Then, something called back, his own voice. Same tone, same echo. He froze. I could see the color drain from his face. I swear my hands went numb. I could barely hold the lantern. We backed up fast, but before we could leave, it spoke again, this time in my voice. Soft, quiet, and wrong. I felt my chest tighten. My throat went dry. I couldn't even think. We ran. The whole way back to the truck, it followed us. The same whistle. Those same 3 notes, over and over, closer every time. When we reached the road, I could still hear it faintly echoing through the trees. The next morning, we went back for our gear. Everything was gone. All we found was one gutted fish, lying on the rock with its mouth open like it was trying to whistle. That's when I remembered what my grandfather used to say. If you ever hear whistling in the woods after midnight, don't answer, because it's not calling to you. It's calling for you. The pumpkin field at Miller's Hollow. 2 years ago, around Halloween week, I took a seasonal job at a pumpkin farm in southern West Virginia, a place called Miller's Hollow. It was one of those small family-run farms that open every October for hayrides and harvest festivals. It looked peaceful enough during the day, but at night, that place felt different. The air got colder, and the fields were so quiet, you could hear your own heartbeat. The old man who owned it always told us not to stay in the field after dark. He said the soil was restless when the sun went down. I thought he was joking. On our last night before Halloween, 5 of us stayed late to finish clearing the last rows. The sun dropped behind the ridge, and we lit our lanterns, small flickering lights across the field. It looked like something out of an old postcard. Then the ground started to move. It was subtle at first. The soft crunch of dirt shifting beneath the vines. I thought maybe it was a mole or raccoon, but the sound kept circling us, like something crawling under the soil. I remember whispering to the guy next to me, "Do you hear that?" He nodded, eyes wide. Then the first lantern went out. One by one, they flickered and died. The last thing I saw before it went pitch dark was a pumpkin with small holes across it. Not cut, not carved, more like something had chewed its way out. Then the whispering started. It was low and muffled, like voices coming from underground. I felt the dirt move under my boots. My chest tightened. My breath got halfway up my throat. I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. Something brushed my ankle. Cold, wet. I ran. I don't remember deciding to. My legs just took off. By the time I reached the barn, I couldn't breathe. My hands were shaking so bad, I couldn't even open the latch. When I turned back, the field was still, completely still. The next morning, we found the soil ripped up in long lines, like something had tunneled just under the surface. The old man looked at the damage, didn't say a word for a while. Then he told us the truth. The field used to be a burial ground. They just built over it. He sold the land right after Halloween. No one's gone near it since. But people driving past at night still say they hear whispering coming from the fields. Like the crowns trying to talk. Voices on Boone Ridge Road. I live outside Boone, North Carolina, right in the mountains. There's an old mining road up there that's been closed for decades. Locals call it Boone Ridge Road. It's the kind of place people dare each other to visit on Halloween night. Last October, my buddy Tyler called me late. His truck broke down halfway up the ridge. He sounded nervous, said he kept hearing something moving in the fog. I told him I'd come get him. It was around 10 p.m. when I got there. The air was thick with fog, heavy enough that the headlights just bounced back white. It was dead silent, except for the creak of the trees in the wind. We hooked up the tow chain, but I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone. I kept glancing into the woods. Every time I looked, I thought I saw something shift just past the fog line. Then we heard it, a woman's voice, soft, distant. "Please, help me." We both froze. It sounded maybe 50 feet away, but it was hard to tell with the echo. I yelled back, "Where are you?" No answer. Then again, "Please, help me." Same tone, same distance. My pulse started hammering in my ears. I tried to tell myself it was someone lost, maybe a hiker, but the voice didn't sound right. It was flat, mechanical, like someone imitating how humans talk. Then it said my name, not screamed, not shouted, whispered, just my name, perfectly clear. My stomach dropped. I looked at Tyler. His mouth was open, eyes wide, completely pale. We didn't even speak. We just bolted into the truck. The second we shut the doors, the voice came again, right outside the window. I swear to God, it sounded like my mom. Same voice, same way she says my name when she's scared. Tyler floored it. The tires spun in the gravel. The chain sparked behind us, but we didn't stop. I could still hear the voice following us for a while, fading in and out through the fog. We didn't talk the entire way back to town. When I finally got home, my hands were still shaking so bad, I could barely unlock my front door. Later that week, I checked the dashcam footage. The video was useless, but the audio, it picked up something. Dozens of voices. Men, women, children, all whispering over each other. I will not go back. Not ever. There's something about the Appalachian Mountains that feels older than the map says. The kind of old that listens when you speak. The towns down here don't celebrate Halloween the same way. They say the mountains already have their own ghosts. And every October, they wake up a little hungry. These are 3 stories from people who grew up here. None of them talk about what they saw anymore. But if you've ever been on an empty road in Appalachia after dark, you already know how the air changes when something's near. This is Halloween in Appalachia. The lights on Ridge Road. I live in the Appalachian part of southern West Virginia. There's a back road out here called Ridge Road. Mostly gravel. Nothing but trees. No cell service for miles. People around here say every Halloween, lights appear in those woods. Some claim they're lanterns from old miners who never made it home after the collapse. Last Halloween, my friend Caleb and I decided to drive up there. We parked off to the side near mile marker 9, left the truck running, locked the doors, and walked a little way up the trail. The woods were too quiet. No animals, no wind, just dead still. Then, about 50 yards ahead, we saw a light between the trees. It wasn't bright, just this dim yellow glow, moving side to side, like someone walking with an old lantern. Caleb yelled, "Hey!" thinking it was another hiker or a prank. The light stopped. A few seconds later, 2 more appeared beside it. 3 lights total, lined up in the trees, not moving. I could hear my pulse in my ears. The fog around them seemed to pull in closer. Caleb whispered, "They're coming closer." I said, "No, they're not moving." But I was wrong. The middle one started gliding forward. No sound, just sliding through the trees like it was on rails. We backed up fast. When we turned to run, the light flickered in front of us, blocking the path back to the truck. Caleb froze. I could see on his face he was trying to make sense of how it moved that far without a sound. The light started moving toward us, slow and steady. We sprinted downhill, branches hitting our legs, flashlight beam bouncing all over. I could hear Caleb behind me yelling. The truck's headlights were still on, cutting through the fog, but the doors were unlocked and open. When sure, we left them locked and closed. We both jumped in. Caleb hit the gas so hard the tire spun on the gravel. As we tore down the road, the lights followed, all 3 again, staying just at the edge of the fog behind us. Every time the truck jolted around a bend, they vanished, then reappeared closer. It was like they were matching our speed without touching the ground. When we finally hit pavement, the lights stopped. The rear-view mirror showed nothing but fog curling at the tree line. We drove straight into town without speaking. At the gas station, Caleb stepped out to breathe. His hands were shaking so bad, he dropped his lighter. That's when I saw the back of his jacket. 3 perfect circles of soot burned into the fabric, spaced like fingertips. He threw the jacket away that night. I haven't been back to Ridge Road since, but every Halloween, when the fog rolls in, people still post pictures online of lights drifting across that ridge. Always 3, always in a line. I don't care what they are. I just know they found us once, and that's enough. The Kaymore Mine. I live in southern West Virginia, in the Appalachian Hills. The old Kaymore Mine sits a few miles from town, carved into the side of the mountain. It's been closed since the 60s, after an explosion trapped dozens of men inside. Everyone here grew up hearing stories about it. Lights in the trees, voices down in the shaft. But most of us figured it was just locals trying to keep kids away. Last Halloween, me and 2 friends, Kyle and Ryan, decided to go see it. We were bored, half drunk, and thought it'd be a good dare. The road out there was narrow and muddy. No guardrails, no cell service. Fog kept rolling in and out of the trees. We parked near the end of the old service trail and walked the last half mile. The woods were so quiet, we could hear water dripping from the leaves. When we reached the gate, the fence was pulled open like something had hit it from the inside. The "Keep Out" sign was bent backward. The tunnel entrance looked like a black hole in the rock. Rusted rails ran straight into it. The air coming out was colder than outside, heavy and dusty. It smelled like metal and old fire. I snapped a few photos, and the flash barely reached 10 feet in, just stone walls and mist. Kyle climbed up on the concrete to shine his light inside. The beam caught a section of the tunnel. Then something moved. "Did you see that?" he said. I hadn't. Ryan said it was probably dust or bats. Then we all saw it. A shape at the far end, standing in the middle of the track. Tall, solid, not moving. We froze. The figure didn't step forward, didn't fade. It just stayed there. My light flickered, then came back on. The shape was closer. I told them we should leave. No one argued. We started backing up. Every few seconds, I looked over my shoulder toward the truck. When I looked back at the entrance again, the shape was gone. Kyle kept the flashlight pointed straight at the tunnel while we moved. Then we heard it, metal scraping like something dragging along the rail. Kyle dropped the light. We ran for the truck, sliding in the mud, hitting branches. I don't even remember unlocking the doors. When the engine started, the headlights caught something right at the entrance. It wasn't a full figure now, just part of one. Shoulder, arm, maybe a head bent forward. It didn't move. We reversed down the trail until we could turn around. None of us spoke. When we got to the main road, I finally looked back. From that distance, the mine entrance looked small, just a dark spot on the hill. I don't know what we saw. I just know something was standing in that tunnel, waiting for us to come closer. And I'll never go near that place again. Halloween night in the Appalachians. I live in southern West Virginia, deep in the Appalachian Hills. It's quiet out here. No streetlights, no traffic, just woods. The closest neighbor is half a mile away. At night, the only sounds are the creak behind the house and the wind through the trees. This happened about 5 years ago, on Halloween night. I was living in a small cabin my uncle built back in the 70s. It sits at the end of a gravel road that used to lead to a coal mine, but the mine's been closed for decades. That night started normal. I cooked dinner, watched some old reruns on a battery-powered TV, and sat out on the porch for a bit. Around 9, the wind picked up and the power went out. That happens all the time out here, so I wasn't worried. I lit a few candles and decided to read for a while. A little after 10, I heard something outside. At first it was faint, a branch snapping, then another. I thought maybe a deer or a raccoon. I kept reading. Then the steps got slower, heavier. They moved around the side of the cabin. The sound of leaves crunching came closer, then stopped. I set the book down and listened. Nothing. Then a single step again, right outside the front porch. I yelled, "Hello?" No answer. I went to the window and pulled the curtain just a little. Couldn't see much, only fog between the trees. The steps started again, this time moving toward the back of the house. The cabin has 2 small windows in the back, one by the kitchen and one by the bedroom. I walked to the kitchen one and turned off the candles so my eyes could adjust. The sound stopped under that window. I waited, holding my breath. A few seconds passed, then something brushed the wall, slow, steady, like fingers dragging over wood. My dog, Hank, started growling from under the table. He never does that. I thought about calling my cousin, but my phone had no signal. I sat there for a while, waiting. Around midnight, I heard the screen door move, just a small creak, and then it slammed hard, shaking the windows. Hank barked like crazy. I shouted, "Get out of here," and ran to the door, but when I opened it, nobody was there. I kept the flashlight pointed across the yard. The woods were dead still. The fog had settled low, and I could see footprints in the mud, big ones, coming from the trees toward the porch. I followed them a few steps. They went around the cabin, stopped at every window, and ended right by the steps. I went inside, locked every door, and stayed up till sunrise. When I finally stepped outside the next morning, the footprints were still there, even though it had rained a little overnight. I followed them again, past the tree line this time. About 30 yards into the woods, they just stopped. I called the sheriff later that day. He said maybe a lost hunter, but there's no open hunting land that close to my property. He took one look at the prints and said they looked like work boots, size 12 or 13. Too big for any of the local guys. Every Halloween since then, I drive into town and stay at my cousin's place. I haven't spent another one alone out there. I still don't know who was walking around that night, and I am not even sure if I want to know. The house in the cutback. I've lived in southern West Virginia my whole life, up in the hills near Hinton. You grow up here and get used to how quiet it gets at night. But there are certain places in Appalachia where the quiet feels different, heavier, that kind of silence that hums in your ears. It was Halloween night, about 6 years back. The county dispatcher called around 9, said a big oak had fallen across Cold Branch Road, blocking both lanes. Everyone else was home with their kids or half drunk watching the game, so I took the truck out myself. That stretch of road runs through a narrow cut between two ridges. The rock walls lean in close, and when you drive through at night, your headlights just bounce between them. You can't see much beyond what's directly ahead. I found the tree about halfway down the hill. No big deal, I thought. The road was slick with dew, but the weather was clear. No wind, no crickets, not even the sound of the creek that usually runs beside it. Just the engine idling and that strange, empty stillness. I'd been cutting through the smaller branches, maybe 10 minutes, when I noticed a faint light up through the trees. It was orange, like an old porch bulb. I hadn't seen a house out here before. There shouldn't have been one. I've worked these roads for years. I know every fence post and mailbox by memory. But there it was, a house sitting on the slope just above the road. 2 stories, siding half gone. Windows dark, except that one weak bulb on the porch. The kind of place that looks like it's been rotting for decades. I figured maybe someone still lived there, maybe needed help. So I climbed the embankment and called out, "County road crew, anybody home?" No answer. When I got closer, I realized the bulb was swinging gently, like it had just been bumped. The door was cracked open. The smell coming from inside was sharp. Not death, not rot, just old stale air that hadn't moved in years. Then I heard my truck door close. It wasn't loud, but it was clear. I looked back down through the trees and saw the headlights still on. The cab lit just enough to make out the driver's door were closed, but I know I left it open. For a second, I just stood there, trying to convince myself the wind had done it, even though there wasn't any. I ran back, boots slipping in the wet dirt, and when I got there, the door was open again. Keys still in the ignition, engine still running, nothing around but the dark road and the tree I hadn't finished cutting. I drove home without looking in the mirror once. The next morning, I came back with another guy from the crew to finish the job. The oak was still there, but the hillside looked different. No sign of a driveway, no mailbox, no house, just brush and stone. Later that week, I mentioned it to an old-timer at the diner in Hinton. He said there used to be a place up there, back before the flood of '79. Whole family got trapped when the hillside gave way. I don't know what I saw that night, and I don't really care. All I know is, every Halloween since, I skipped that route, because some parts of Appalachia never let go of what they lose. The ridge at Briar Fork, I was working nights for the county road crew out near Briar Fork, a small hollow tucked deep in the southern Appalachians. It's the kind of place where the roads are barely wider than a truck and cell service cuts out as soon as you hit the first curve. That Halloween, I drew the short straw and got the night watch at the salt shed halfway up the ridge. Nothing exciting, just keeping an eye on the grader and the fuel tanks until morning. I had a thermos of coffee, a small radio, and the sound of the wind through the trees. Around 11, the wind stopped. Not slowed, stopped. The air went flat, like somebody had turned the world off. I stepped outside, thinking the generator might have died, but it was still humming fine. The silence was so deep that my own footsteps sounded wrong against the gravel. Across the valley, maybe a mile away, I saw a single porch light burning on the opposite slope. I'd never noticed a house there before, and I'd been working this route for years. The light flickered a little, then went steady again. By midnight, the fog came in, not the thin kind that drifts. This rolled heavy through the trees and pooled in the low spots until I couldn't even see the fence 20 feet out. I decided to drive down to the junction. Figured if the fog kept up, I'd just wait it out by the main road. About halfway down, I hit something I'll never forget. The road split. It's a single-lane ridge road. It can't split. But right there in front of me, 2 tire-scarred tracks veered off to the left, climbing higher into the trees. The dirt looked freshly turned, like somebody had graded it that week. I'd never seen that path before. I stopped and rolled down the window. The smell that came through wasn't right for the woods. It was damp clay mixed with creosote, the kind of smell that comes off railroad ties or old timbers. I should have backed up and gone home, but curiosity's a bad thing in these hills. I turned left. The fog thickened until the headlights hit nothing but white. I drove maybe another quarter mile before I realized there were no trees anymore, just stumps, a whole stretch of ground stripped bare. My tires crunched on something that wasn't gravel. When I got out and looked with my flashlight, the beam hit rusted rebar and half-buried concrete. It wasn't a road. It was the foundation of something. Rows of it, all running downhill, like the outline of old houses. And that smell, stronger now, almost metallic, was coming from a shallow trench that ran through the middle. I didn't stay to see more. I got back in the truck, threw it in reverse, and drove. When I finally looked in the mirror, the road behind me was gone, just solid forest. Back at the shed, the clock on my phone read 2:17 a.m., but the dash clock in the truck still said 12:17. A week later, I asked a county surveyor if there'd ever been building permits up that ridge. He said there used to be a small mining camp there, washed out by a slide in the '40s. He said they never cleared the foundations. every Halloween since. When the fog drifts low over Briar Fork, you can see the faint shape of that split in the road again for a few minutes before it disappears. I've seen it twice now, but I don't stop anymore. The Hollow, behind the water plant. I live outside Princeton, West Virginia, down in southern Appalachia. There's an old service road that runs behind the municipal water plant, mostly used by maintenance trucks checking the creek line. Locals call the area the Back Hollow. It's not on any map, but everyone in town knows to stay out of it after dark. Last Halloween, I was covering a night shift at the plant. Nothing special, just keeping an eye on the pumps and making sure the intake screens didn't clog with leaves. Around 10, the supervisor called and said a pressure sensor was tripping along the secondary pipe, a few hundred yards up that service road. He asked me to go check it. The air was cold and clear when I started walking. Flashlight in one hand, radio on my belt. The road follows the creek, narrow, lined with sycamores and stone retaining walls built a lifetime ago. You can hear the water most nights, but that night, it was barely a trickle. About halfway in, I caught a faint hum coming from up the hollow. It wasn't machinery. The plant doesn't run anything that far out. And it wasn't power lines either. It was deeper, steadier, like vibration through the ground. I stopped to listen, and the sound seemed to fade the moment I noticed it. Another 100 feet, and the temperature dropped. Not a cold breeze. The air itself felt different, heavier. The beam of my flashlight showed mist curling off the creek, even though the water wasn't warm enough to steam. When I reached the sensor box, it was fine. No debris, no pressure issue, nothing to explain the alarm. Then I saw the mud. The entire bank on the far side of the creek was disturbed. Wide patches of wet earth with long streaks through it, like something heavy had been dragged uphill. But there were no boot prints, no tire marks, nothing that made sense. Just smooth channels in the clay, leading into the trees. I stood there too long, staring. The hum came back, stronger now, almost under my feet. It made the metal sensor pole tremble. I backed off slowly, keeping the light on the ground, and the second I stepped onto the gravel, the sound cut out. When I reached the gate and checked my watch, it said 12:41. I'd only been gone maybe 40 minutes by my own guess. But when I got inside and signed the log sheet, it showed I'd left at 10:11 and come back at 11:35. The control room clock said 11:41. My watch was running an hour fast, or something had taken more time than I remembered. Either way, I can't explain it. The next morning, daylight showed nothing. No tracks, no torn earth, no mist. Just quiet water and leaves floating downstream. Every Halloween since, that same sensor trips, once between 10 and midnight. Nobody's assigned to check it anymore. They say it's the system glitching, but you can feel the vibration through the concrete whenever it happens. Like the ground remembering something it doesn't want to. Halloween night feels different deep in Britain's most haunted woods. The air turns colder, the roads empty, and the woods grow unnaturally still. Across Britain, there are forests known for strange stories, places most people avoid after dark. Sherwood Witchwood, Cannock Chase. They're among the most haunted woods in the country, and every year, someone passing through them ends up seeing something they can't explain. These are their stories, real encounters that happened on Halloween night, deep in Britain's most haunted woods, Sherwood Forest. This happened on Halloween night, 2023. I don't usually talk about this because it sounds stupid. Every time I've tried, People give me that polite look, the one that says they think you're exaggerating, or you've seen a shadow and convinced yourself it was something else. But I swear this happened 2 years ago, Halloween night. Back then, I worked at a small cafe right on the edge of the forest. We closed around 10 that night. It was damp and cold, and the fog had started to roll in across the fields. My co-worker Callum offered to walk me part of the way home. Normally, I'd take the main road, but he said there was a trail that cut straight through the woods and came out near my street. He'd done it before, he said. It would be fine. At first it was. The forest was quiet, except for the sound of our shoes on the wet path. The fog was low, curling around our legs, and our phone lights bounced against the trees. We were laughing about something stupid, probably just trying to fill the silence. Then, about halfway through, I started to feel uneasy. It's hard to explain why. There wasn't a specific sound or sight, just that heavy awareness that you are not alone. A few minutes later, I realized why. Someone else was walking behind us. The sound was faint but steady, just the crunch of gravel underfoot, matching our pace exactly. I thought it was echo at first, but when we stopped, the sound stopped too. That's when my stomach tightened. Callum called out, "Hello." His voice echoed a bit, then died away. Nothing answered. We stood there for a moment, trying to act calm, but I could tell he felt it too. That weird electric feeling in the air when something's not right. He laughed it off, saying it was probably a deer, but we both knew it wasn't. We kept walking, faster now, the fog getting thicker around us, until everything looked like silhouettes and shadows. I kept glancing over my shoulder, and that's when I saw him. He was about 20 feet back, half hidden behind a tree. I couldn't make out his face, but I could see the shape clearly. Tall, broad-shouldered, completely still. I grabbed Callum's arm and whispered, "There's someone there." When he turned with his light, the shape was gone. Just gone. Callum swore under his breath, and we started moving quicker. Neither of us spoke again after that. Every crunch of our boots on the path sounded too loud, like it was drawing attention. My hands were shaking so badly, I dropped my phone once, and Callum just said quietly, "Don't stop, just keep moving." When the path finally opened up into the car park, I almost ran. The air felt lighter, like stepping out of water. I didn't even want to look back, but something made me. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I just needed to prove to myself there was nothing there. But there was. Right at the edge of the fog, half hidden among the trees, someone was standing. I couldn't see his face, but I could tell he was looking straight at us. We both froze. And then, in the time it took for me to blink, he was gone again. Neither of us spoke on the walk home. The next morning, Callum called me before work. He said he'd had this dream about being back in the woods. Only this time, he could feel someone walking behind him the whole time, close enough to touch his shoulder. He said he woke up shaking and couldn't get back to sleep. He didn't come in that day. A week later, he quit. I still live near that forest. I drive past it most days, and every Halloween, when the fog comes down, I catch myself staring between the trees, wondering if he's still out there, standing just far enough back that you can't quite see his face. Witchwood Forest. I've done delivery work for years, so driving late at night doesn't usually bother me. In fact, I've always liked it. The quiet roads, the empty fields, the way the world feels completely still. But that changed on Halloween night, 2018. I was out on a route near Oxfordshire, cutting through Wychwood Forest to reach one last farmhouse delivery before midnight. That part of the road is narrow, just 2 lanes and no lights, and on foggy nights, it feels like driving through a tunnel. The mist had been getting thicker for miles, and the air felt damp inside the van, even with the heater on. The radio had lost signal half an hour earlier, so all I could hear was the engine and the tires rolling over wet tarmac. Then I saw her. At first, I thought it was a trick of the fog, but as I got closer, the shape sharpened. Someone standing right at the edge of the road. A woman. Her coat looked pale, maybe grey, and her hair hung long and dark, plastered against her shoulders. She wasn't waving or signaling for help, just standing there, completely still, facing the trees. I slowed down and rolled the window halfway, thinking maybe she'd broken down or gotten lost. "Are you all right?" I called out. My voice sounded too loud in the silence. She didn't move, didn't turn. The road was completely empty behind me. No lights, no movement. I hesitated for a moment, then pulled over a few feet ahead. I told myself it would take 30 seconds just to check if she was okay. When I got out, the cold hit me immediately. The fog was so dense, it clung to my clothes, and I could taste the moisture in the air. The woman was still there, 10, maybe 15 feet away, facing the trees. "Do you need help?" I asked. Still nothing. I took a few steps closer, slow, trying not to startle her. That's when she turned her head just slightly, like she'd heard me, and I saw her face. I don't know what I expected. Fear, confusion, maybe relief, but there was nothing. Her expression was blank, her eyes fixed somewhere past me, like she wasn't really there at all. She didn't look hurt, but she looked wrong, pale in a way that didn't look natural, like every bit of color had been drained out of her skin. Then I noticed her hand. She was holding something, a small metal keychain, glinting in the light. It took me a second to realize what it was. A car key. I asked if her car was nearby, if she'd had an accident, and she slowly turned her head back toward the forest, not answering, not even reacting, just staring. That was when I felt it, that prickling sense that tells you you've crossed into somewhere you're not supposed to be. Every instinct in me screamed to leave. I backed away slowly, got into the van, and locked the door. I didn't even look back when I started driving again. I just pressed the pedal and went. By the time I made it to the farmhouse, I could barely sign the delivery slip because my hands were shaking. The owner must have noticed, because he asked if something had happened. I told him I'd just seen a woman by the road, and before I could say where, he nodded slowly and said, "By the milestone?" I said yes. He sighed, like it wasn't the first time he'd heard that. "People see her around this time of year," he said quietly. Her name was Ellen. Crashed into the flooded ditch on Halloween night, back in the 60s. They pulled her out the next morning, still holding her car keys. I didn't say anything. I just thanked him, got back in the van, and took the long way back. It's been years since then, but I still think about that drive. Every time fog settles over the road, I catch myself watching the tree line, half expecting to see her there again. Just standing, waiting, looking toward the forest. Cannock Chase. This happened on Halloween night, 2020. I'd been staying at a small hotel near Hednesford for work. I'd finished dinner early, and I didn't really feel like sitting in my room all night, so I decided to take a drive through Cannock Chase. I'd read a few things about it, the folklore, the old mines, the strange sightings. But I never took that sort of thing seriously. To me, it was just another patch of woodland. It was around 11 when I set out. The air was cold enough that my breath fogged the inside of the windshield, and the mist hung low over the road. There were no other cars. I remember thinking how strange it felt to be surrounded by so many trees, but not hear a single thing. About 20 minutes in, I saw a set of headlights in the distance. For a moment, I felt relieved, like, okay, at least I'm not completely alone out here. But as I got closer, I realized the car wasn't moving. It was parked off to the side of the road at a weird angle, half hidden behind a patch of trees. At first, I thought maybe they'd broken down or stopped to take a phone call. When I passed, I glanced through the window. The driver's seat was empty. But there was something in the back, a car seat, and in it, a small stuffed toy, a brown bear sitting upright, facing the window. I don't know why, but that image made my stomach twist. There was nothing inherently scary about it, but it felt wrong, like the car had been abandoned mid-journey, and the bear was just waiting. I drove on for another minute before guilt got the better of me. What if someone really had broken down? So I slowed, turned the car around, and drove back, except when I reached the spot again. The car was gone. I thought maybe I'd taken a wrong turn. I went up and down the same stretch of road twice. Nothing. No tire tracks, no lights, not even the indentation on the shoulder where it had been parked. That's when I started to feel uneasy. There was nowhere else it could have gone. Both directions were straight, clear roads, no junctions, no turnoffs. I pulled over for a minute to get my bearings. The fog was so thick, it looked like smoke drifting across the road, and the silence pressed against the windows. I opened my phone to check my location. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then turned the phone off. I suddenly felt like I shouldn't be stopped there. When I finally reached a small car park at the edge of the forest, I pulled in and sat there for a while, trying to calm down. That's when I noticed something on the driver's side window. 5 fingerprints. Small. Too small to be an adult's hand. They were faint, smeared across the glass, like someone had pressed their hand there and dragged it down. I hadn't seen anyone on the road. I told myself there had to be some logical explanation. Maybe they'd been there earlier. Maybe a kid had leaned on the glass before I left the hotel. That's what I told myself anyway. When I got back to the hotel, I parked under a streetlight and just sat there for a while, looking at the empty passenger seat. I remember thinking that it was stupid to feel watched when there was no one there. But when I finally looked up into the rearview mirror for a split second, I thought I saw movement in the back seat. Just a shift of shadow. Nothing solid. Enough to make me turn around. Of course, nothing was there. I don't drive through Cannock Chase anymore. Even thinking about that place makes my chest tighten. I can still see the fog on the road, the empty car with the bear in the window, and those small handprints pressed against the glass. Halloween's supposed to be fun. Costumes, candy, decorations, people laughing in the streets. It's the only night of the year when nobody questions the knocks, the footsteps, or the shapes standing in the dark. We just tell ourselves it's a trick-or-treater, a prank, a shadow, and maybe most of the time, that's all it is. But every so often, it's not. And when it isn't, that's when Halloween stops feeling like a holiday and starts to feel like something else entirely. So turn off the lights, get comfortable, and let's begin. The mask. You ever have one of those moments when you realize too late that something's wrong? That's what this felt like. It was Halloween night, close to 1 in the morning. I was driving home from a friend's place a few towns over. They'd had a small get-together, just a few of us hanging out, watching horror movies, talking. Nothing wild. I remember being tired but relaxed. That warm buzz you get after laughing too much. The road I take home is long and empty. It cuts through farmland, a few patches of woods, then runs straight into my neighborhood. No streetlights, no traffic, just darkness and the sound of the tires. I've driven it hundreds of times, but that night, it felt different. The air had that thick October chill, and fog was starting to roll across the fields. About 20 minutes in, my high beams caught movement ahead. Someone walking right in the middle of the lane. At first, I thought it was a drunk kid from a party. That stretch of road leads nowhere, and the nearest house is miles off. I slowed down, thinking maybe he needed help. When I got close enough for the headlights to really hit him, I realized he was wearing a mask. A full white one. No colors, no fake blood, no costume. Just a smooth white face with 2 eye holes. It threw me off for a second. The person wasn't moving to the side or waving for help. He was just slowly walking, straight ahead. I honked once, expecting him to step off the road. He didn't even flinch. Something about that tiny detail made my stomach turn. I can't explain it, but it was like every nerve in my body decided to wake up at once. I slowed almost to a crawl, trying to decide whether to stop or go around. That's when he turned his head, slowly, just enough that I could see one of the black holes of the mask catch the light. I felt my throat tighten, like I couldn't swallow. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden movement, no jump scare. It was the slowness that did it. It was too deliberate, too aware. I pressed the gas and started to pass, keeping as much distance as I could. The car crept by, and for those few seconds, he kept that same angle of his head, following the car. Once I was clear, I sped up without meaning to. I checked my mirror, and he was still there, now standing on the road, not moving, not trying to leave. Just a pale face floating in the dark behind me. By the time I got home, my hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the lock. I didn't even turn on the lights. I just sat on the couch, trying to calm down, telling myself it had to be someone messing around. But it didn't feel like that. It felt targeted, personal somehow. The next morning, when I walked out to the car, there was something on the back passenger window. A handprint. It was clear as day, 5 fingers, smudged in the morning dew. I wiped it once to make sure it wasn't from me earlier. It wasn't. It was on the outside, pressed into the thin layer of dirt on the glass. Whoever it was, they touched my car after I passed them. I can't drive that road at night anymore. I tried once, about a month later, and had to turn around halfway through. Every time I think about that white mask just standing there, it's like my chest gets tight all over again. The pumpkin. My neighbor Mark loved Halloween more than anyone I've ever met. He was one of those guys who planned his decorations a month in advance, always trying to outdo himself from the year before. Fog machines, fake tombstones, those motion sensor witches that shriek when you walk past. His house was the one all the kids stopped at first. The year before last, he'd gotten this massive pumpkin. Must have been 40 pounds easy. Perfect shape, perfect color. He told me he'd found it at some farm an hour out of town. He carved it the day before Halloween, and I remember him calling me over to look at it. He'd done this amazing face, wide grin, sharp teeth, eyes that somehow looked alive when the candle was inside. I remember laughing, telling him it looked like it was daring someone to come closer. He said, "Good, that's the point. That was the last time I saw him alive." Halloween Day came, and everything was already set up on his lawn. The fog machine running, the speakers playing those ghost noises, the pumpkin glowing bright on the porch. But something felt a little off. Usually, Mark was outside talking to people, handing out candy, making jokes. That night, he wasn't there. The house was lit, decorations on, but no Mark. I figured maybe he'd stepped inside for a bit, maybe to grab a drink or take a break. But as the hours passed, I realized no one had seen him all evening. Kids still came up, took candy, moved on. That big pumpkin kept flickering, the light inside it steady as ever. I remember standing by my window around 11:30, looking across the street at his house. The fog was drifting around his yard, that same creepy laugh track playing over and over, and that pumpkin grin cutting through the dark. It should have been festive, but it felt wrong, like a stage still lit long after the actors left. The next morning, I woke up to sirens. 2 police cars and an ambulance were parked in front of his house. I went outside, half asleep, and saw them carrying out a stretcher with a white sheet over it. I didn't need to ask who it was. Later that day, one of the officers told me he died sometime the morning of the Halloween heart attack in the kitchen. They said it probably happened quickly, which meant everything we saw that night, the fog, the sounds, the pumpkin burning, had been running by itself. That image still gets to me. That pumpkin he was so proud of, sitting there glowing all night while he was gone. The candle inside burned until it finally gave out sometime after 3 in the morning. When they found it the next day, the wax had melted into a puddle, the inside black with soot, but the carved grin still perfect. I still live across from that house. The new family keeps it nice. Bright porch lights, no decorations. But every Halloween night, when the neighborhood starts to quiet down, I always end up glancing at that spot where his pumpkin used to sit. I don't know why. Maybe just habit. The porch light. Halloween nights usually end kind of soft. Kids gone. Candy wrappers on the street. That strange calm that falls over the neighborhood. It was like last year when I finally got home from work. It was a little after midnight, quiet enough that I could hear the wind moving the paper decorations on my porch. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. The porch light was off. Now, I always leave it on when I'm not home. It's habit. So, when I saw it dark, I figured the bulb had burned out. I remember juggling my keys, half tired, walking up the steps and thinking how cold the air felt. But when I looked up, the bulb wasn't burned out. It had been unscrewed just enough to kill the light. And that stopped me. You know that moment when your brain catches up a second late? It was that. Because for someone to do that, they had to stand right there, where I was standing. I looked down at the candy bowl I'd left out earlier. It was empty, which I expected, but it was sitting dead center on the top step, perfectly lined up, not even bumped. That's when the quiet started to feel heavier, like the air itself got thicker. My skin prickled. I tried to brush it off and open the door, but then I saw my security camera. It's this small black dome right above the frame. Usually, it faces straight down the steps, but that night, it was turned toward the wall. I just stared at it for a minute, because that meant whoever had been there knew it was there. They looked right at it and reached up to move it. I went inside, locked the door, and stood there in the hallway with my phone in my hand. Every sound felt louder than it should. The hum of the fridge, the clicking of the baseboard heater, even my own breathing. I opened the camera app and scrolled through the feed. And the last video was time-stamped 9:48 p.m. There was someone at the bottom of my steps. They were just standing there, facing the house, wearing a hoodie with the hood up. And then the video froze. The next clip was static. I don't remember how long I sat there watching that screen. My heart was hammering, but I couldn't look away. I must have replayed it 10 times, hoping I'd notice something different. Maybe a reflection, a car, anything that would explain it. But there was nothing, just that still figure, and the camera cutting out. I called the police. When they came, I told them what I saw. They said it was probably a kid playing a prank, that people mess with cameras all the time on Halloween. The officer was nice about it, but I could tell from his face that he didn't think it was funny either. He told me to keep my lights on and make sure the locks were solid. For the next week, I couldn't fall asleep before sunrise. Every time the house settled or the heater clicked, my whole body tensed up. And every night, I caught myself glancing at that porch light, half expecting it to go out again. The radio. I'd been alone in my dad's house for about 6 months when Halloween rolled around in 2019. It was raining that night, heavy, steady rain that drowned out everything else, the kind that makes you feel cut off from the world. Around midnight, the lights flickered twice and then went out for good. The neighborhood went completely dark. No power lines buzzing, no street lights, not even the hum from the refrigerator. It was like someone had sucked all the noise out of the air. I lit a candle and sat in the living room, trying not to think about how quiet it was. After a few minutes, I started hearing static, faint, like an old TV left on somewhere. I thought I was imagining it at first, but it kept going. I followed the sound into the kitchen, and that's when I saw it. My dad's old radio sitting on the counter. It was one of those heavy ones with a cracked handle and worn-off labels. He used to listen to baseball games on it every weekend, but I hadn't touched it since the funeral. I know I didn't turn it on. I hadn't even seen it in months. But it was on. Through the static came a voice, a man's, cheerful, with that old-timey radio tone. He said something like, "Join us for the annual Halloween carnival in the town square tonight." Then a jingle started playing, one I hadn't heard since I was a kid. That carnival burned down in 1994. 3 people died. I remember standing on the street, watching the smoke from my dad's shoulders. There hasn't been a carnival here since. I froze. The voice kept talking, like nothing was wrong. Then it started fading, replaced by breathing, soft, right against the microphone. And then it said, "You still live on Pine Street, right?" I dropped the candle, the flame went out, and I was standing there in total darkness with that voice whispering through the static. My stomach dropped so hard, I thought I was going to throw up. I backed away until I hit the wall. Then the radio clicked off. Just silence again, except for the rain. When the power came back, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I just stood in the doorway, staring at it on the counter, waiting for something, a sound, a flicker, anything. I unplugged it that morning and put it in the back of a cabinet. It's still there. I never turned it on again. But every time there's a storm, I catch myself listening, just in case the static starts before the thunder. The parade. I grew up in a small town that used to love Halloween. We had a big parade every year. Floats, music, the marching band, people sitting on their porches watching. It was the one time this place didn't feel dead. That all ended back in 2011 when one of the floats caught fire near the end of the route. A little girl died right there on Main Street. After that, the town stopped doing Halloween parades altogether. Nobody even suggested bringing them back. Last year was quiet, like it always is now. I worked late, came home, watched a movie, and fell asleep on the couch. Sometime early in the morning, I woke up because I heard music. At least, I thought I did. At first, I figured my TV turned itself on. The sound wasn't coming from the TV. It was outside. It took me a minute to recognize what I was hearing. Drums, horns, whistles. It was a parade. The same rhythm I used to hear as a kid when the floats passed my house. I thought maybe I was dreaming, but when I pulled the curtain back, I could see lights moving through the fog down the street. Big floats lit up in orange, people walking beside them, kids in costumes. For a second, I just stood there smiling because it felt like being a kid again. Then it hit me that it was 6 in the morning. The sky was gray, no sunrise yet. Nobody else's lights were on. I didn't hear a single car or voice anywhere, just the music. I opened my front door to listen better, and the second I stepped outside, everything stopped. The lights, the sound, everything. I don't mean it faded, it just cut off. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds before I realized I was holding my breath. The street was completely empty. I told myself I'd been dreaming. A few minutes later, I was in the kitchen trying to calm down when I heard a single drum beat from inside the house. Just one, loud and deep, like it came from the hallway. I froze. My mouth went dry. And for some reason, I didn't want to turn around. Then I saw something on the floor near the door. Little orange paper triangles. Confetti. I didn't have any decorations up, and nobody else had been in my house for days. I swept it up and threw it away. But that night, I kept thinking about it. The next morning, when I woke up, there were more of them. Just a few, right inside the front door. I vacuumed and tried to forget about it. Now, it's been almost a year, and I still live in the same house. Every Halloween morning, sometime between 5 and 6, I wake up before my alarm. I always know it's coming because I can feel it before I hear it, like the air changes. Then the drums start. Quiet at first, just far enough away that I could pretend it's thunder. I don't look outside anymore on Halloween. I don't want to, and I still don't know if that was the last parade. The storage unit. I used to run a little Halloween attraction out by the edge of town. Nothing big. A few props, fog machines, lights, fake tombstones, that kind of thing. After every season, I'd store everything in a cheap unit, about 15 minutes from my house. Rows of rusted metal doors, one light flickering over the keypad, and a sign that said 24-hour access, like anyone would actually want to be there at night. It was the first week of October last year when I went back to grab a fog machine I'd forgotten. It was close to midnight, raining lightly, and the parking lot was empty. I remember sitting in the car for a minute because something about the place just felt off. Too quiet. No hum from the highway, no wind, just quiet. My unit was near the end of the row. When I walked up, I noticed the padlock was turned the wrong way. I always face it to the right when I lock it. This time, it was to the left. That stopped me for a second. I almost turned around and left right there. I unlocked it anyway and lifted the door. That metal scrape echoed down the whole line of units. Everything inside looked normal. My boxes stacked the same way. The props piled in the corner. Nothing looked touched, but something about the air inside felt different. It smelled stale, like old basement dust, and something faintly sweet underneath. I grabbed what I needed and was about to pull the door shut when I heard another door slide open, somewhere down the row. I stopped moving. It was a slow scrape, metal on metal. And then, nothing. At first I thought maybe it was the wind or the metal contracting. But then I heard movement. Soft steps, just one or two, and then the sound of something brushing against the side of a box. I called out. Just a quick, hello. Nothing. The sound stopped completely. I waited for maybe 10 seconds, listening so hard my ears hurt. Then I shut my unit, locked it, and started walking back to the car. I kept my flashlight low, trying not to look down the row. Halfway there, I heard it again. The same door creaking open, slow and careful. I didn't turn around. I just got in the car, started it, and pulled out fast. When I passed the main office on the way out, I saw a van parked near the far end of the lot. No lights on inside, no logo, just sitting there. It wasn't there when I came in. The next morning, when I came back to drop off the keys, there were police cars out front. The manager told me someone had broken into a few of the units overnight. In one of them, 2 doors down from mine, they found a dead body. They said a man had been living there for weeks. I didn't ask any more questions. I just told the manager I wanted to cancel my lease. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about how long I'd stood there with my door open, listening, while someone else was in there with me. Too close. When I moved back home last year, I wasn't expecting anything to feel different. Small towns don't change much. People get older, shops close, new ones open for a few months, and shut down again. I rented an apartment on Grant Street because it was cheap, 2nd floor, right across from this old house that's always just been there. I remembered it from when I was a kid. Nobody ever lived there. The lawn stayed short. The curtains were always drawn. And every Halloween, someone left a candle in its mailbox. Always the same kind. White, with a wick that had already been burned. Nobody knew who did it, and people stopped asking a long time ago. I hadn't thought about that place in years, not until Halloween night. It was quiet that evening. The trick-or-treaters were gone. The air smelled like wet leaves, and I was sitting by the window with a beer just watching the street. That's when I noticed it. A light in the window of that house across the street. It took me a second to realize what I was seeing. It wasn't a lamp. It was too soft, too warm. It looked like candlelight. Just one small flame in the upstairs window. At first I thought, okay, maybe someone finally moved in. Maybe they're unpacking. But there hadn't been a car in the driveway all week. I remember leaning closer to the glass and feeling this little drop in my stomach, like I knew it wasn't normal before I could explain why. The curtain behind that light shifted, not a breeze. It moved slow, like a hand brushing it aside. My skin crawled immediately. It's strange how your body just reacts before your head catches up. I stood there a while, just staring, and the longer I looked, the more I realized how still everything else was. The whole street felt held in place. Then, right as I told myself to stop staring, the light went out. A few seconds later, I saw a faint flicker down by the porch, in the mailbox. I couldn't see it clearly from that distance, but it looked like another candle was lit. And that's when my heart started racing. I tried to tell myself someone was just playing a prank. Maybe one of the local teens. Maybe even a neighbor trying to keep the legend going. But I couldn't shake that feeling. The one where your chest feels tight and heavy. I decided to go outside. The air was cold, almost wet, and everything smelled like dirt and smoke. Crossing the street felt wrong. It's hard to describe, but it was like the closer I got to that house, the quieter the world became. The sound of my shoes on the pavement got swallowed up. When I reached the porch, I saw it up close. The mailbox door was open, and a candle really was burning inside. Steady flame, barely moving, as if there wasn't any air at all. The wax had already melted halfway down the sides. I looked up toward the window. The curtain was open now, and there was a faint outline behind it. A shoulder, maybe. A head. It was too dim to tell, but whoever it was, they were facing me. My heart stopped cold. I froze completely. It didn't move. It didn't even flinch when the porch light above me flickered once and died. I backed away slowly, keeping my eyes on that window, and the light inside flickered out again. That's when the candle in the mailbox went out too. Snuffed clean. Not wind, not air. Just gone. I didn't run. I just walked home as calmly as I could. Went straight inside and locked the door. I didn't look out the window for the rest of the night. The next morning, there were 2 police cars parked out front. Apparently, someone on the other side of the block reported seeing smoke from the upstairs window. The fire department checked the whole place. Nothing. But they did find one thing. On the windowsill, where I'd seen that light, there was a perfect black circle burned into the wood. Like a candle had been sitting there for hours. And right next to it, clear as day in the dust, was a handprint. Small. Too small to belong to any adult. They locked the place up again. By afternoon, it looked exactly like before. Curtains closed, house quiet, mailbox empty. That night, I told myself not to look again. I made dinner, sat away from the window, turned off the lights, and watched a movie. When I finally gave in and looked outside, the house was dark. For the first time all day, I felt calm. The next morning, on my way to work, I noticed something in my own mailbox. A small white candle, half melted. I grew up in a small town in Ohio, one of those places where Halloween is still a big deal. Every year, the fire department sets up a bonfire behind the library. Kids run around in costumes, and by midnight, the streets are completely empty again. Nothing ever happens here. That's kind of the point. Behind our old middle school, there's a stretch of woods that leads down to the river. Everyone in town knows about it, but no one really goes back there after dark. The teachers used to say it wasn't safe because of coyotes, but the kids told different stories. That the school used to dump broken equipment down there years ago. Desks, lockers, old lights. And every Halloween, those old lights flickered for a second. Nobody ever agreed on what caused it. Nobody took it seriously. It was just another small-town rumor. On Halloween night, my senior year, a few of us ended up walking that way after the bonfire. It was me, Tyler, and his girlfriend Bree. We weren't looking for trouble. We just wanted a quiet place to hang out for a while. The moon was bright, the air heavy and damp. That kind of October night when you can smell cold metal in the wind. When we got closer to the tree line behind the gym, we noticed something strange. There were lights deeper in the woods, small, soft, and low to the ground. At first, I thought it was someone's campfire or a few flashlights, but the color wasn't right. It wasn't orange or white. It was pale green, like the backlight of an old computer screen. We stood there for a minute, trying to figure out what we were looking at. The lights weren't steady. One would fade, another would glow brighter. Tyler said it was probably kids messing around with glow sticks. But then they started to move. One by one, the lights shifted, not fast, not random. They moved in small, even steps, like they were changing places. It was so slow that at first, it didn't even register what was happening. Then I realized they were forming a shape, a line. My stomach dropped. It was that same feeling you get right before something bad happens. Everything in me wanted to leave. We started backing up toward the field. The air smelled weird now, sharp and metallic, like burning wires. When I turned around, I saw that the fog that had been low over the ground wasn't fog at all. It was smoke, rolling out from the trees. Bree said she heard something, like quiet static, faint but constant. I didn't hear it, but the look on her face made my skin crawl. Then, just like that, every single light went out. The woods went black, not the kind of dark you get in the country. This was worse. You couldn't even see the outlines of the trees. We didn't talk, didn't even yell. We just ran, straight across the field, back toward the school, not stopping until we were on the pavement again, under the floodlights by the parking lot. When I looked back, everything was normal. The fog was gone, the trees were still, and there was nothing but the sound of the flagpole chain tapping in the wind. We didn't tell anyone that night, but the next morning, people were already talking about it. The janitor found something behind the gym while mowing. 10 perfect burn marks in the grass, each one about the size of a dinner plate, all spaced evenly in a straight line that led right into the woods. The local paper ran a short piece about it, called it vandalism, said it was probably left over from fireworks or some kind of prank. But the grass in those circles never grew back. Even now, 15 years later, you can still see them from the track if you know where to look. I drive past that school sometimes on my way to work. They built new fences, new lights, new security cameras. All of it looks normal, but every year around Halloween, someone reports seeing those green lights again, always in the same place, always in a straight line. I don't go near it anymore. Whatever we saw that night, it wasn't kids, and it wasn't a prank. I don't think it wanted to hurt us. But I still feel like we interrupted something we weren't supposed to see. It was Halloween night, the last place I expected to spend. It was at the library. Ours isn't big, 1 floor, red brick, smells like paper and floor polish. Every year, they stay open late for the town festival. Ghost story readings, candy at the front desk, cider for the parents. It's warm and harmless. The kind of place nothing bad ever happens. I worked there part-time in college, shelving books and closing at night. Under the building, there's a basement, not open to the public, full of old newspapers, maps, broken chairs. Nobody ever went down there except staff. That Halloween, my boss, Mrs. Clark, asked me to stay late and help lock up. We shut the doors around 10. She went to count the donations while I started turning off lights, room by room. By the time I reached the reference section, the building was empty. At least, it should have been. When I passed the basement door, I noticed a faint glow underneath it. The basement light was on. That door's always locked, and only Mrs. Clark has the key. I figured she'd gone down there, so I called her name. No answer. The light coming up from below wasn't white. It was yellow, soft, unsteady, and the air that drifted out was too warm, too still. I told myself not to be stupid and went down the stairs. Halfway down, I heard this low hum, like electricity, but heavier, deeper. The light seemed to come from the back corner near the old archive shelves. Then it went off. For a second, I couldn't see anything at all. When it came back, it was pulsing, slow, steady, bright, dark, bright, dark. That's when I saw it. A chair in the middle of the floor and someone sitting in it. I called out again. They didn't move. Their head hung forward, shadow across their face. The light kept flashing over them. Bright, then gone. I took one more step and my stomach dropped. It wasn't a person. It was one of the old mannequins from the Halloween display. The one that used to sit by the door holding a plastic pumpkin. Someone had dressed it in a staff uniform. The name tag was crooked, jacket sleeves rolled up, and light was leaking out through the seams in its arms and neck, glowing from the inside, like something burning quietly beneath the skin. I didn't think. I ran. By the time I reached the top step, the light went out again. Mrs. Clark was standing in the hallway, asking where I'd been. I told her someone left a mannequin in the basement. She looked confused, said all the Halloween decorations had been packed up and delivered to the elementary school 2 days earlier. When she went to check down the basement, everything was dark. No mannequin, no chair, not even a bulb in the socket. She told me to go home. I didn't argue. A week later, Mrs. Clark called to say they were cleaning out the basement. She asked if I wanted to help, but I told her I was busy. I didn't want to see that room again. A few days after that, she told me something strange. When they moved the old furniture, they found deep scratches on the concrete floor, in the same spot where I'd seen the chair. 4 marks, close together, like something heavy had been dragged in a circle. She laughed it off, said it was probably from when they used dollies to move the shelves. But she sounded uneasy. That was years ago. The library's still open. Same building, same smell of old books. But I never go inside anymore. Mile marker. 237 Halloween runs are supposed to be easy money. Light traffic, cooler air, a straight push through the night. I'd been hauling produce west out of Dallas, trying to make up a few hours I'd lost at the dock. By the time I crossed into the Panhandle, the sky had gone that deep blue-black, where it almost looks solid. The radio hissed every few minutes, then went quiet again. Nothing but the tires, the engine, and the faint whistle in the cab seals. Around midnight, the wind just stopped. It's strange when that happens on open highway. No movement in the grass, no pressure against the mirrors. The world feels like it's holding still. That's when I first saw it. A small dark sedan parked on the shoulder, hazards blinking. I called it in, mentioned the mile marker, and kept rolling. Happens all the time. 15 minutes later, the same orange flash caught my eye. Same rhythm, same stretch of empty road. I frowned, checked the GPS. The screen showed I'd traveled nearly 20 miles, but the sign on the right shoulder read 237 again. I told myself it was another car, same model. Coincidence, except coincidences usually don't make your stomach drop like a stone. The third time it appeared, I slowed to 60. The flashes painted the cab in bursts of color, and for a second, I thought I saw a shape leaning forward in the driver's seat. When I rolled past, the seat was empty. The door was cracked open. My hands went numb on the wheel. I remember thinking, don't stop. Don't even glance at the mirror. Because the part of me that wanted to look was the part that already knew something wasn't right. From then on, time got slippery. The clock on the dash jumped back and forth. 1:48, 2:12, 1:53. I'd look at the odometer and swear the numbers were fading lighter, like chalk in rain. Every few miles, I caught myself gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles hurt. I kept the CB on low, just to hear another human voice, but the channel stayed dead. Not even a trucker joke, not even static, just that deep, wrong kind of quiet. I rolled the window down, hoping for air, but it felt thick and heavy. The smell hit me next, burnt metal and hot rubber, the kind that comes right after an accident. Only there wasn't one. The highway stretched ahead, clean and perfect under the moon. Then the sign showed again. Mile 237. My chest tightened. I could actually feel my pulse in my teeth. The sedan sat exactly where it had before. Only this time, the lights weren't flashing. I slowed, afraid the engine might stall if I braked too hard. As I eased past, the taillights dimmed to black. The engine stumbled once, caught again, and I pressed the accelerator until the RPM needle shook. The truck lurched forward, and the rear view mirror filled with darkness. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until the edges of my vision started to pulse. The next exit never came. I drove until the horizon began to pale, convinced I'd missed every sign. Finally, a lonely diner appeared, one of those chrome boxes with a single gas pump and a neon coffee cup in the window. I pulled in, hands trembling so badly, I almost missed the parking line. Inside, smelled like bacon grease and floor wax. The waitress poured coffee before I even asked. I must have looked awful, because she said, "Rough night, sweetheart," and I laughed too loud. I told her about the sedan, how I kept passing it, how the mile markers didn't make sense. She listened, nodding slow, then said, "You said 237. When I nodded, she frowned a little. "That stretch has been closed twice. First time a wreck. Halloween about 5 years back. Guy burned out in his car before help came. Second time, a flash flood washed the marker away. They replaced it last month." I didn't know what to say. I finished the coffee, left a tip, and went back to the rig. The sun was climbing, but the dash clock still glowed 2:37 a.m. I shut the truck off, restarted it, pulled the fuse, everything. It never changes. Sometimes, late runs take me past that same corridor again. I tell myself, I'll look, maybe stop, prove it was just exhaustion playing tricks. But when I see the numbers climbing, 234, 235, 236, my chest starts to tighten, and my hands sweat on the wheel. I keep my eyes straight ahead until I'm sure I've passed whatever's waiting at 237. And every time I glance at the clock, it's still 2:37. The way station Halloween runs always have that odd quiet to them. It's not just fewer cars. It's like the whole road falls asleep. I'd left Flagstaff that morning, hauling a half load of produce bound for Dallas. By the time I hit eastern New Mexico, the sky had gone black and the air felt dry as paper. No wind, no bugs hitting the windshield, nothing. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the soft rattle of loose change in the cup holder. I'd already been driving close to 11 hours, planning to stop at a rest area another 40 miles down. Then I saw the sign, Way Station, 1 mile. Most of them close by 10, but every light in that lot was blazing. the green open sign glowing hard enough to sting my eyes. I figured maybe they were running late checks for the holiday, so I flipped my blinker and rolled in. The place looked brand new, fresh paint, lines on the asphalt still bright. The lot was empty. Not another rig in sight. The office windows spilled orange light across the scale. Through the glass, I could see somebody at the counter, tall, wearing a dark shirt. They didn't move much, just sat there. I gave one quick honk, and after a second, the figure raised an arm and waved me forward. The moment my front tires left the scale, everything went black. Not a fade, not a flicker. The lights just died. For a couple of seconds, I sat frozen, the truck idling loud in the dark. Then the air in the cab shifted. It got heavy, thick, the kind that makes your chest feel smaller. I turned off the headlights to see if maybe it was a power cut on the whole grid, but the rest of the highway beyond the fence glowed fine. Only the station had gone dark. My stomach twisted tight. I grabbed the flashlight, climbed down, and felt the gravel slide under my boots. The building's window reflected my light straight back, so I cupped a hand around it and looked inside. Everything was perfectly still. Coffee mug on the counter, a clipboard, a clock on the wall stuck at 12:01. The chair behind the desk was turned slightly, like someone had just stood up. Then the flashlight dimmed. I smacked it against my palm, and the beam pulsed once, twice, like something was draining it. From somewhere came a low hum, soft but steady, a tone you feel more in your ribs than your ears. My pulse started matching it before I even noticed. I told myself it was a generator. Still, I took a step back toward the truck. The hum rose an octave, sharp enough to make my teeth ache, and then stopped altogether. The silence afterward was worse. My ears rang like I'd been standing next to an engine. That's when every outdoor light in the lot snapped on at once. White floodlights, the green open sign, everything. The glow hit me so hard, I actually stumbled. My flashlight went dead completely. I turned toward the highway and saw the road empty in both directions. Not one car in sight. I climbed back into the cab, hands slick with sweat, heart thudding like a hammer against my ribs. I tried the radio. All I got was static. I drove fast for a while, not caring about speed limits, just wanting distance between me and that place. The CB stayed silent all the way to the state line. By sunrise, I was running on caffeine and nerves. I pulled into a truck stop, called dispatch to report a power outage at the way station. The guy on the other end went quiet for a few seconds, then asked me to repeat which one. When I said the exit number, he told me the station had been closed for nearly a year. Power cut, windows boarded, no staff assigned. I didn't argue, just hung up and stared at the phone for a while. Later, curiosity got the better of me. I looked it up on my laptop. The first article I found said a trucker died there last Halloween. Massive electrical fire caused by faulty wiring. The building had been condemned ever since. Now I take the long way around every October. I can't bring myself to pass that stretch of road. Some things on this road you just learn to live with. Channel 19. I've spent most of my life on the road, and I've heard all kinds of stories passed between truckers, haunted stretches of highway, phantom hitchhikers, old stations that never existed. You laugh at most of it because that's what keeps the night moving. But the thing that happened to me on Halloween 5 years ago, I don't laugh about that one. I was running east along I-80, coming out of Wyoming into Nebraska. It was about 10 p.m., cold enough that the windshield wanted to frost. The moon was bright, the kind that makes the road glow a little, and traffic was thin. I had Channel 19 open on the CB, mostly static, sometimes a voice checking directions or weather. Nothing unusual. Around 11, a woman's voice came through, clear, calm, like she was sitting right next to me. She said, "Don't stop for the child." That was it. Just that one sentence. I figured it was somebody fooling around. You get bored enough out here, you do stupid things. I keyed up and said, "Copy that." "What child?" No answer. A few seconds later, same voice again, same tone, same words. "Don't stop for the child." That's when I noticed the signal strength meter wasn't moving. No static, no source, nothing. The radio wasn't even catching a transmission. My stomach dropped. That cold wave that runs through you when something doesn't line up with what you know. I left the channel open but turned the volume down. The next hour was quiet. I started to think maybe fatigue was setting in. Halloween night, long haul, imagination running wild. Easy to explain away. Then, just after midnight, I saw him. A small figure standing on the shoulder up ahead, right at the edge of my headlights. Looked like a kid, thin, maybe 10 years old. He was facing the road, not moving. My first thought was that he was lost or waiting for help, so I slowed down. As I got closer, he stepped back toward the grass, and for a split second, I thought he was waving. That's when the voice hit the radio again, louder this time, almost sharp. "Don't stop for the child." Every hair on my body stood up. I hit the brake just enough to keep control, but my chest locked tight. My skin crawled like something cold ran under it. I drove past at about 40, watching him in the mirror. He didn't move, didn't even turn his head as my taillights faded. My heart was pounding so hard, I could feel it in my throat. I kept my eyes straight ahead until I saw the lights of a truck stop off exit 312. I pulled in, parked between two reefers, shut everything down, and just sat there with my hands shaking. A few minutes later, another driver parked next to me. He got out, came to my window, said he'd been right behind me for about 10 miles. He asked if I'd seen the kid. I asked what he meant. He said, "That boy on the shoulder, right? You stopped for a second, then just took off like a bat out of hell." I told him what I heard on Channel 19. He went pale. He said, "Man, that's an old story. Happened every Halloween around here. Some drivers say they pick up a weak female signal, warning about a child. The first guy who ignored it back in the 80s wrecked his rig trying to avoid a kid standing in the road. They found the truck burned out, but no kid, no body. I didn't respond, just sat there, staring through the windshield. The CB was still on, volume low. I've never heard her again, not once, not on any frequency. Thanks for watching. No sleep tonight. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. It truly helps this channel grow and keep these horrors coming. I'll see you in the next one. And until then, sleep well.